Hello, I would like to welcome you to the presentation of MyITest4U for web application. Everything which is mentioned in this screencast you can also find on the website under Getting Started Web. After you installed MyITest4U, it's best to set some preferences when you start it the first time. So I just start MyITest4U. Now you have to first create a new user so that you can log in. Just use my standard. Now you can log in, and we want to do later on something with web, so we leave the default. We want to do some test generation, again we leave the default, and the editor starts. Now the preferences you can set here under File, Preferences, and here you can enter a path to the editor. This is just a normal text editor. This text editor will be used to view log files and other files which MyITest4U is generating. I usually use the PSPad editor and I set the path to it. Then another program you will need is a program similar to Excel. This is quite useful to view parameter files, and if you have to do a lot of editing to do, then you also can use the Excel to do this. I have installed on my machine the LibreOffice programs, and then it's scalc. So I have to get this path. Now another path which is quite useful to set is the path to WinMerge. That is useful if you want to compare some files. So I also will set the path to WinMerge. Then the path to Java Home you can leave empty, so your installed Java will be used, the usual one, and the max results from the table. This means this is the maximum test results which will be used from the database. You can leave it just 5, that's just fine. So you click OK and your preferences are set. Before you can start testing, MyITest4U has to know the auth, the application on the test, which we want to use. We want to do some tests for web applications, so we start MyITest4U, log in. Then we have to use the web here, which is the default, and we want to do some test generation. Again, we can leave the default. And now we want to enter the auth, so make sure that this drop down is set to new auth. Then you go to the menu, new auth, and you enter a name. This can be any name. Then the global find and global not to find you can leave empty. Here you can decide if you want to use the WebDriver Manager or not. If you want to use it, then the WebDriver Manager is used, and everything about it is described on this web page here. Then you also need a profile, and in the profile you can enter any name for the profile. Then you need the root URL and the page URL of your web application. The root URL is the URL under which all pages are found, and the page URL is the URL to the first page of your web application. I will just use the test application provided by MyITest4U, so I copy the URL and enter it here. Just the same, and now remove this bit, and I will also say it's the default profile, so you click OK and OK again, and your auth is now known by MyITest4U. You also have to enter an auth release. This is the same as with the auth. You have to make sure that this drop down is set to new auth release. Then you go to the menu, new auth release, enter any name, and the auth release is also entered. Now you are ready to start testing. And before we start with the test generation, we just will have a look at our test application. So this is the test application I made for these videos. The first page just contains a form where you can enter some values. If you enter something here, like Hansley, and then you submit the form, the Hansley will appear down here, and there are some error messages. Then you can use those links to get to the next page. The second page has just another form. This form is bigger. It contains most of the input fields used by HTML5. And again, you can submit the form, and it will behave the same as the first page. As a link, so you can go back to the first page, then we can have a look at the second page. This page just contains two drop-downs. The drop-downs are single select. You can select, for example, a color, and you can click on select, and you will see what you selected down here. You can go back to home, and the last page just contains an other select box. Here it's a multi-select. You can, for example, select red and blue, and green, and you submit the form, and you will see down here what is selected. So this is our test application. So before we can start creating our test, MyITest4U has to know all the tags of your web application. And I'm sure to enter them all manually would take really a lot of time. And therefore, MyITest4U comes with the sub-application, which is called Spider. And the Spider will do exactly that. It will collect all the tags of your web application. To run the Spider, you go to Run Spider. Then you can leave all the defaults, and you just click Spider, and the Spider will start. Now, what will the Spider do? The Spider will treat your web application as a tree. It will start at the first page, collect all the tags. Then it will look if in the tags are some clickables. That means buttons or links and so on. And it will then click all the clickables it found. After each click, it will collect all the tags. Once it's finished, it will start over, and it will go on till no more tags are found. And you have seen in the meantime the Spider finished, and we are now ready to start creating our first test. MyITest4U has two tabs, as you can see. There is a test tab and a test block tab. Now, under the test tab, you will see all the tests which you created, and on the test block you will see the test blocks. Now, what's the difference? A test just contains one or more test blocks, and except from this, there is no major difference between the two. So when I talk about test, it could always mean a test in the meaning of MyITest4U, or it could also be a test block. If you want to create or to change anything in the test, then you have to go to the test block tab. And here is also the place where you can create your tests manually. So for this, you will use this table here in the editor, and you see you have to enter a few things. The URL will be the URL of the page where the GUI element will be found. The tag will be the HTML tag, which belongs to the element, and the element column will be just more specific for the element. It could be the ID of the element or the name or whatever MyITest4U means. Then the speaking name we don't need, and the step is clear. That's just a step of the test step. And then you have to give an action. The action is what MyITest4U will do with the element you created. And if the element needs, the test step needs some values, then you can enter the values here. The rest we will not need for now. Now we have seen our test application, and on the test application on the first page there are just a few entry files, and we want to create now a test which will write something into the name and then submit the form. So for this we go into the URL with the control space. You get all the possible entries, so we select this one. Then for the tag, again with control space you get all possible entries. We know the name is an input tag, so we select the input tag, and we do the same for the element, and we know we want to enter something in the name, and as you can see the name is here. We select it. Once we selected it, this will change, and we see now all the attributes of the name, and we are quite sure it's what we want to have, the name. Then we go to the action. As I said, we want to set a text. So here you have all the actions which are usually possible with the input element. So we set it, and then we have to give something a value. I just take Hansley as value, and now you can go on. If you use tab, you will get to the next cell, and if you use tab in the comment cell of the last test step, then it will just enter a new test step. And again we have to select the URL. It will be the same. Now the button, we know it's a button tag. It could be an input or a button tag. Then we select the button. We want to submit the form, and the action we want to use is click. I'm just blind. Now I found it, and the action has no parameters, so that's all we have to do. Now we have to give the test a name. Let's call it T1, and we will save it. Now the test is saved, and we could immediately run the test. But we won't see a lot in this test, so I will just select here the screenshot and do an update of the test, so that we are able to see what MyITest4U did. And we can run the test by using just the defaults. And we will see MyITest4U runs this test now in Chrome. You see it put Hansley into the name, because everything goes quite fast. And that's the reason why I put in the screenshot. We can go with the mouse into the row of the step where the screenshot is. The screenshot is marked with this S, and we just click it, and the screenshot opens, and we see here name was entered, the form was submitted, because we have here name Hansli as the output. So you see, it's quite easy to generate tests manually, but as this takes a long time if you have a lot of tests, and MyITest4U also has some test generators, and these we will see as next. MyITest4U allows you to generate tests automatically. MyITest4U comes with 3 built-in test generators. One of these test generators allows you to generate tests for all the forms of your web application. For this to work, there are some preconditions, and these preconditions are: your web application has to use forms, which means you have to use the form tag, and your forms have to be created below the form tag. The second precondition is in your form you are only allowed to use standard HTML. This means, for example, if you have a drop-down list, you have to create this drop-down list using the select tag and not in another way. If these two preconditions are fulfilled, then MyITest4U is able to generate the tests for all the forms of your web application. And how this works, we will see now. So the generators, they are in the menu on the generator. We just use this one, make all forms. When you open it, then there is a small dialog. In this dialog, you can say that MyITest4U should add the steps to the first GUI element. So we will select this one, and the rest we can leave the defaults. We just click OK. And now you see MyITest4U generated 4 tests. They appear here in the log window. That they appear double, that's just a small bug in the generator. Now we will have a look at one of the tests that have been generated. We take this one. This is the test for the second page of the web application. Just make sure that you are in the test log tab, because otherwise, if you are in the test tab, you won't find anything. You do a search, and now you see MyITest4U did quite some work for you. There are quite a few steps. So the steps, they belong to this form here, which is the second page of our application. You see you have quite a lot of input fields, and then you have 4 buttons which you can use to submit, reset, or just for demonstration. So we go back, and you can believe me, you have here inputs for all the fields in the form we just have seen. If you scroll down, then you see here something new. We have here tests which are marked in green, these are these ones, and then we have here tests which are in white. This means the following: the green tests, that they are done by MyITest4U, and the white ones, they are just ignored. And ignored means MyITest4U will do nothing with these test steps. They are treated in the same way as if they wouldn't be here. The reason why the test generator is built in this way is quite simple. Usually it doesn't make any sense to click more than one button for the same data set. So for example, if you want to submit the form successfully, then it doesn't make sense to click first reset and then submit. This won't work. This is just for convenience that the test generator is doing this. Another convenience is this one here. MyITest4U will just take a screenshot after the click, This is again for convenience, because sometimes it's quite difficult to see what MyITest4U really did. And if you have a screenshot, then it's easier to see what happened. So now we will, of course, have a look if the test really works. So we just started. It will take a few moments. And you see MyITest4U is filling in all the fields. And now it's finished, and you see there is one test was made and one step did fail. You can also see this here, 25 steps. One step failed, missed is none. Now the failed steps, they are marked with this exclamation mark, and if you go with the mouse in the row of the failed step, then you see the error message. Now if you look at the error message, then the error message is quite obvious. The file which was used by this step, which would be to upload a file, this file was just not found, which is not very surprisingly, because that's just a default file used by MyITest4U, and of course it's not likely that it's found on your machine. Now, if you know that this is an error, but you know the file is not there, and nothing really happens if it's not there, so you can still run this test, then it's quite annoying if this error is always appearing. Now, there are a few ways you can treat situation like this. Of course, you can put the file into the temp directory, then the error won't happen. Second one is you could just ignore the test step. And the third one is you could tell MyITest4U by checking this check mark here. You could tell MyITest4U it should just ignore the result. Now what is MyITest4U doing when you do this? As I said, it will ignore the result, so there will be no error. And once you fix this, so you put the file into place, then MyITest4U will show you an error and tell you something changed, so you are forced to have a look at the new situation. And yeah, so you have seen MyITest4U is able to generate tests automatically. And now we could run every test which was generated manually, but this would take a lot of work and is quite boring, especially if you have a lot of tests which have been generated. And for this reason, MyITest4U allows you to run more than one test at once. And MyITest4U allows you to run more than one test at once. That you can do this, you first have to generate your run scripts. This you can do under Run, Generate all run scripts. And in this dialog you have two possibilities. You can run the tests out of this dialog, or you can just generate the run scripts. We will do the later one. We just select all the tests and then generate the scripts. The scripts which will be generated are normal batch scripts, and they can be used as normal batch script anywhere in other batch scripts. Now, instead of running the test out of this dialog, MyITest4U has a more comfortable way to do this, and I will show this now. So we leave this dialog, we go again on the Run, then Test Execution, and you see in this dialog you have quite a lot of possibilities, and I will not go through all the possibilities. The first thing you have to do that you can run an execution is you have to add some tests. When you click on the Add button, you will show all which have run script. So the tests will appear here. You first have to generate the run script. You can just select the tests you want to run. We want to use this one and this one, and you click OK, and the test will be added to the execution. Now, when you look at the table here, you see it has quite a lot of columns, and each of these columns is a runtime parameter. And I guess it's very clear that it's very difficult if you won't have this table to make sure that all the run scripts have the same run parameters. And it's also cumbersome to set them in this table. So for this, you have the Update All button. It will get active once you select the test. Then you can click here, Update All. You can just change a value. For example, this one into bar. Then you click OK, and it will change the value in all the tests which are in the execution. So this is quite useful. You have to change quite a few runtime parameters. Now we will do it again and take it away, otherwise we will get just a lot of error messages. Now the next thing I want to mention is the add others. With the add others, you can add any other files or executables to your test execution. This can be very useful, for example, if you have to import a DB snapshot before you run the execution or in between of the execution. And the next thing you can do is you can run the tests in more than one browser. We will do this. We will set Chrome and Edge as the browser. And now you have to give the execution a name, call it E1, and you can create it. The execution will be saved, and then it will be created. Once again, a normal batch script is created, and you can run it as you can do it with every other batch script. And we will do this now. We will go to the Explorer. Scripts are always saved under MyITest4U, then the auto releases, then the name of the auth with the release, and then in the script folder. So we just generated this execution here, and we will run it now. And MyITest4U will run now the execution. It will take a few moments. We just watch what MyITest4U is doing. So as you can see, first it runs the test in Pro. And now we will run the test in Edge. Once the execution is finished, it will also pass the log file and write the test results into the MyITest4U database so that you can have a look at them later on. So the execution is finished and we can go back to MyITest4U. MyITest4U finished the execution and now we want to have a look at the results. So we just close this dialog here and we go to Analyze and Show Test Results. Now Test Results dialog will open. At the top you get a summary of the tests which have been made, and you also can see how many errors you have found in the test. The dialog will always open with the current selected. Current means you will see the last test run of each test. That's also the reason why we have here only one run, because we have only the last run, and MyITest4U treats runs in different browsers as the same test. Now we can take the current away and do a refresh, and you will see now we have the two runs because of the two different browsers we did use. If you select current again and do a refresh, then you see you will have here the date when the test did run, and you also have the user which did run the test. Of course, when you take the current away, you can't show the run date because now you have more than one run date for the test, and it could be the same for the user. Now, if you want to have a look at the test and see what happened, because here you see we have two fail steps, you can just double-click the test here, and MyITest4U will open it in the test editor. And you can see, you see we have here the two runs which we did, and we can here have a look at the error, and we see it's the error I showed you before. The file for the upload was not found. Now when you go further down, you have here the screenshots, and MyITest4U will save the screenshots browser dependent. So you see here the test which is shown here has the screenshot in Chrome, and if we select the other test and go to the screenshot, then the screenshot is again in Chrome, so we have to select the first one. We go now, the screenshot will be in Edge. So you can see MyITest4U really saves the screenshots browser dependent. Now another nice thing that I will show you in the Analyze dialog is this Show Error Message button. Just can click it and it will show you all the error messages which have been found in the test. The error messages are summarized by the value they have. So if more than one test has the same error message, you will just here get a higher number, and here you will find an example of a test in which the error did appear. And now the really nice thing about this dialog is you can filter the error messages. So if you select one of the error messages and click refresh, then in the dialog here, which we can see now, remove this stop, only the tests are shown which have other error messages than the ones which were selected here, and also tests which have no error messages will not be shown in this dialog here. This way, if you have a lot of error messages and a lot of systematic errors, it's quite easy to figure out what really happened in the test execution. Now if you select this one here and do a refresh, then just all the tests disappear, because we know we had these two errors, the one found in Chrome and the other one found in Edge. You can close this dialog. If you do a refresh, then the results will come back again. That's what I wanted to show you about the test analysis. There are situations when you create tests where it would be nice if you could use the same test block all the time. So for example, if you have an application where there is a login, then it would be nice if you could create a test block for the login and then use it in every test you will create. And that's exactly what you can do with MyITest4U. You can build tests, and I will show you now how you can do this. You just load the test block you want to use, then you click on the plus sign, enter here where it will appear. You click OK. Now you can search for another test block to add. We will take just this one, and if we click on the plus, we can decide where it will appear. We will say it will appear behind T1. We click OK, and if you now go into the test tab, you see we have now added to the test T1 and the other test I selected. We can save it. Let's give it the name test1, and when we save it, then all the steps will appear. Now the test parameters, they are independent of the test block. So if I change something here, like this way, then it won't change in the test block. So if I save now, and if I go to the test block, then you see it didn't change here. And the same is true if I change something here, it will not affect the test. Now there is another situation. For this we will call T1. Let's suppose now we want to change T1. We want to add a step. So we can do this by insert step. So let's put another input. We'll just enter the email. We go to, we'll set the text of the email, and it will be rr@r.ch. And now we have to renumber the test steps, because the same number is not allowed. We can do this by clicking here, and you see now they are renumbered, and we can save T1. Yes, and if we go now to the test, then you will see, when we search for it, that now the email was added, but the parameter value of the email does not appear here. The reason for this is it's very difficult to know which parameters you have to set, because you cannot know if the email was entered after the name or before the name, or whatever changes you did. As you can see, the test block T1 did change. And in this way you can use the same test block in a lot of tests, and if there is a change in the test block, then all the tests using this test block will be updated. So this is again a useful feature of MyITest4U. In MyITest4U you can do some parameter variation. That means you can run the same test with different parameters. To show you this, I loaded our test1, and now if you want to do a parameter variation, you have to open the built-in editor for the parameters. This you can do by clicking on this semicolon here. We'll open the parameter file, and now you can see the parameter file in the editor, and the parameter file has always the same structure. It will always be the step, which is the step 1 in this example. Then there will be the index of the element, which has the default value of 0. Then there will be find and find not, and the AP, which are the additional parameters which you can use to fine-tune your test step. And after the first test step, the second one will come, and this will continue till the end, till all steps are mentioned in the file. Then a further thing you can see is you always have in the file the old parameters. That's the reason is MyITest4U will overwrite the parameter file each time you save a test. and that you still can see the old parameters, MyITest4U just creates them below the actual parameters. And the further thing is the parameters are always read till the first empty line is found, and then MyITest4U will stop reading parameters. And now, as I said, we want to change the parameters in this file. For this, we just remove first the text here. And now we can use the autofill of the editor. And we have here Hansli many times. This won't be very interesting, so let's change the value. R, S, S, D, D, and F, F. And now we save this file and we go back to our test D1. Now what you can see is this drop down here changed. Now you have 1 and 5 in brackets behind it. That means this test is shown the first parameter and it will have 5 parameters in total. You can go here and go to the second one. You see it goes to AA. You can continue to the third one, it's SS, and also to the last one, which is FF. Now you can also change the parameter values here in the test. Let's say we want to make QQ here, because if you change the parameter here in the test, it's a lot easier to see on which test step you are. We just save the test. Yes, we want to update it. And if you now go back to the parameter file, just reopen it, then you see the value changed here into QQ. The same you can do here in the parameter file. We can change this SS in DD. DD we already have in WW. We save the file. And if we go now back to the test and we go to the third one, we will have here the WW. So that's the way you can use different test parameters for the same test and how you can change them and manipulate them. MyITest4U has some built-in universal checkpoints. Now we will have a look at those. The first one is quite easy to use and can be very useful. You can tell MyITest4U that it should look for a certain string in the source of your HTML page after every click, for example. And it should look if this string is there or if it's not there. You can do this in the following way. You go to the auth and you update auth, and if you now write here a string which should be found on every page, then MyITest4U will do it, and you can do the same for strings which should not be found. And if you have more than one string, you can separate them using the pipe character. Now for demonstration we will use home as the string which should be found on every page, and we know it's not there on the starting page of our test app. So we click OK, and that's why we will now run the test which will call the starting page of our test app. If we run it now, then MyITest4U will tell us that the string home is not found on this page. And you see MyITest4U produced 2 errors. And the errors are after a click. And the error message is, as expected, home was not found. And here again, the home was not found. So you see, this is a universal checkpoint which can be very useful. For example, if you want to make sure that page not found errors do not occur. Usually this page not found pages, they have quite unique text and they are easy to be found in this way. MyITest4U contains two other universal checkpoints, and they work the following. You can create a reference, and then you can use this reference to compare the visible text on your web pages against the visible text found in a test run. And you can do the same by using the whole page source. To set this up, you go to Run and Run Configuration, and then you can select here Do Analysis, and now you can say tell MyITest4U if it should take a screenshot each time it does the comparison, and you can here say if MyITest4U should use the HTML source of the page or if it only should use the text. So usually using the text works quite fine, and using the source doesn't work that good. The reason for this is the comparison which will be done is a line by line comparison. And for example, if in the source somebody changes just the formatting, then MyITest4U will recognize this as a change and show you an error. And you can imagine it's quite easy to introduce these kind of errors when you compare the page source. Say using the text only is a lot less sensitive, and it finds most of the time real errors. Now, how do you set up this? This is a bit more complicated, and that's why it will not be shown in the video. To set it up, you have first to create your reference. For doing this, you just run all your tests you want to use, and then let's suppose your application contains some date strings, and the date strings, they will change every day. You run your tests, they will be different, and now MyITest4U allows you to filter out these lines. That this will be done. You just have to run the tests again. In case of the date, it would need to be the next day, and then MyITest4U will filter out everything that has changed. And now you are ready. Your reference is ready, and now you can run then your tests against this reference, and MyITest4U will compare the visible text against the reference, and if there is a difference, MyITest4U will show you an error. This is all explained in the help. Just try it out. It's easier to use than it's to explain. I hope you enjoyed this presentation about MyITest4U, and I guess you got a good impression about all the possibility that MyITest4U offers. And I'm very sure the developers will answer the question MyITest4U with yes, of course. And I hope also the tester will be very happy with MyITest4U, because it will save them really a lot of time. So go ahead and grab yourself a trial and convince yourself that MyITest4U really keeps its promises. So all that's left is to thank you for your attention and hopefully see you back on myitest4u.com.